Guys, so the question of if Africa should continue to annoy or get on the nerves of the US or not is actually, I would argue, a major question now that seems to direct many foreign policies and the direction of foreign policy in South Africa. So I saw a really interesting article that actually says that, a Russian vessel was refused permission to dock in Cape Town, citing several reasons. And I thought that was really interesting, like Russia and South Africa. Is this a sign of another diplomatic fallout? I think this is really sensitive news and it's really important for us to understand.
Welcome back. So a diplomatic row has been brewing between South Africa and Russia after a Russian Navy training vessel was denied permission to dock in Cape Town for refueling. This comes shortly after Home Affairs Minister Leon Schreiber approved a similar request from the United States. The ship last visited Cape Town in August 2023 during a training voyage with over 300 cadets aiming to strengthen naval ties. At the same time, Democratic Alliance criticized the visit, saying it undermined South Africa's non-aligned stance on the Russia-Ukraine war. Government has now explained why entry was refused this time. The MK party slammed the decision, warning it could trigger an avoidable diplomatic fallout. It says Russia remains a key BRICS ally with deep historical ties to South Africa, dating back to its support for Umkhonto we Sizwe during the apartheid era. Newsroom Africa has reached out to the Home Affairs Ministry and the Border Management Authority. Both have refused to comment.
And so I found a report on this on the Cape Times news website. So it says that the South African government's last-minute scramble to secure a deal to avoid Donald Trump's 30% unilateral tariffs is believed to be one of the reasons it has refused, it has refused a Russian Navy Baltic Fleet training vessel entry in Cape Town. This is really crazy. It says that the name of that fleet is called the Smolny, and it was reportedly carrying cadets on a training mission to hone their military communication and navigation skills. So in other words, it's this kind of like practice to really sharpen their skills, right? And it says the vessel had intended to make a brief stopover in Cape Town for restocking, replenishing, and resupply earlier this week. It had about 400 personnel on board the vessel, and it comprised of 200 naval cadets and foreign military personnel from allied nations. Now, it says that the Russian Ministry of Defense stated that the future naval officers will receive practical training during the voyage. Now, it then says that after the Smolny departed on July the 30th, it was supposed to be, this was its first African tour. It visited the Equatorial Guinea on July the 20th, and then Sao Tome and Principe on July the 23rd, and then it offered guided tours to military, police, students, and local Russians, all right? Now, on July 27th, it docked in Point Noir, which is the Republic of Congo, where the naval cooperation talks were held. So we see Russian vessels really having a really dominant sway in African waters. This is really interesting and a really interesting development we have to keep watching, even for the continent of Africa. But for South Africa now, it says, after departing on July the 30th, now it departed, I think this will now be departing from the Republic of Congo on July the 30th. The Smolny arrived in Cape Town on August 5th. And this was following South Africa. Following South Africa, it then traveled to Tanzania and Vietnam before returning to Vladivostok in late September. Now, it says, while the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO, has remained tight-lipped regarding the specific allegations, a senior government source speaking on conditions of anonymity attributed the denial to late negotiations with Donald Trump over the tariffs saga. We don't know who this senior government official is, but somehow it got to the media for us to know that the reason behind the refusal for this vessel to dock in Cape Town was as a result of late negotiations with Donald Trump over the tariffs saga. It says DERCO spokesperson Crispin Firi did not respond to the text messages concerning questions regarding why the vessel was denied entry. The Mkonto Wesizwe Party, MKP, said the decision to deny the ship's entry was as a direct affront to long-standing bilateral ties with it says it was a direct affront to long-standing bilateral ties to Russia. MK Party says denying access to the point of entry in Cape Town can only strain diplomatic relations between South Africa and Russia. MK then says also that Russia was a key partner to South Africa and many other fellow BRICS countries. And so, beyond the immediate diplomatic implications, MK Party slammed President Ramaphosa, demanding his urgent intervention in the matter. MK Party is also accusing Ramaphosa's continuous absence from leadership at critical moments of undermining the South African government and weakening the economy, and now with the Russian ship incident threatening to strain South Africa's relation with Russia. There was also another political analyst, Dr. John Molepe, who actually says that the timing of the small niece arrival coincided with critical tariff negotiations, and this may have placed South Africa's government in a very precarious position, forcing a decision, while perhaps uninviting, was deemed necessary for the broader economic and strategic considerations for South Africa. Yeah. But anyway, that's there the article goes. But I think it was a really interesting development that, the whole position South Africa enjoys in BRICS, right? And these challenges it's having with its negotiations with Donald Trump, somehow really, I don't know really how South Africa can ratify those, but in terms of many of the BRICS countries rising up, I see that India is really standing its ground. I think Trump slammed India again with total 50% tariffs anyway, because India actually refused that agricultural products from the US would be imported into India, because India wants to protect its own agriculture and its own farmers and all of that. And any kind of imports from the US for this area in India would really collapse their farmers, their farm industries and all of that. And so with the 50% tariff slapped, Trump's position for that 50% tariff is because of what he argues that India continues to buy Russian oil, all right? And so because of that connection, Trump has actually increased India's tariffs to 50%. Now, South Africa is at 30%, all right? I'm sure this kind of eventuality with Russia probably docking in Cape Town and maybe doing all of that could have been one thing that would have raised eyebrows in the US. And the 30% already that South Africa is actually already under, it seems to already be bringing a lot of heat, all right? So to have that 30% increased would have been almost maybe somewhat of a disaster. So the South African government, I think, somehow played that. But now my question is, how far would South Africa be willing to go to maybe alter, or I don't want to use damage, but anyway, alter its relationship with its fellow BRICS countries to pacify, the United States, which is a really major important trade partner? How long would this go? What's the strategic objective South Africa has in this kind of thing? And at the end of the day, would we see a South Africa and Russia strained relations? And these are questions that we really need to understand. But whatever the case is, anyway, there's this news now that actually just says that South Africa actually just barred a Russian vessel from docking in Cape Town, which is big news. How the Russians would react, I don't know. How they would perceive this or interpret this, I don't know. But what would be the implications of a South Africa-Russia fallout, a diplomatic fallout, now that it's trying to save its relationship with the US? Let's have a debate in the comments, guys. Share your thoughts in the comments.